It's February 6th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with President Yoon Suk-yeol's ongoing impeachment trial. The sixth hearing of President Yoon's impeachment trial is underway this morning with three key witnesses in attendance who are expected to testify on Yoon's alleged order to deploy the military to the National Assembly. South Korea's foreign trade and defense ministries, along with some leading local firms, have blocked access to Chinese AI service DeepSeek over growing worries about user data collection. U.S. President Donald Trump's ambitions to take over Gaza were met with a strong backlash from the international community. Trump insists everyone loves his proposal. President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial continues with the sixth hearing on Thursday. Starting today, hearings begin in the morning and run throughout the day with three testimonies. Our Oh Soo-young is at the Constitutional Court where the session has just kicked off. Hello there, Soo-young.
Good morning, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, the court has seen some twists and turns in the testimonies by key witnesses so far, and I hear today's lineup will also be interesting.
That's exactly right, Tammy. So the sixth hearing of President Yoon's impeachment trial began just moments ago at 10 a.m. with three key witnesses to testify. On the National Assembly side, former Army Special Warfare Commander Kwak Jong-gun will shortly begin his testimony, and Kwak's claims now they're expected to directly clash with what's been said by President Yoon and former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun regarding the night of the martial law declaration on December 3rd. Ahead of the impeachment trial, Kwak refuted Yoon's claim that the military was ordered to pull out, quote, agents rather than lawmakers from the National Assembly, directly contradicting the president's defense. On Yoon's side, two witnesses will take stand: Kim Hyun-tae, commander of the 707th Special Mission Battalion, and senior presidential secretary for economic affairs, Park Chun-seok. Yoon's legal team is expected to question Kim regarding allegations that the military was ordered to storm the National Assembly under martial law. The questions for Park are likely to focus on the opposition-led parliament slashing the government budget, which Yoon claims led to a state of national emergency, thereby justifying his martial law. From today, hearings begin at 10 a.m., not 2 p.m., as the judges aim to speed up the trial.
So the sixth hearing is now ongoing as we are speaking, and there are two hearings left now. So the question is whether the trial is nearing an end or will it be extended?
Right, that is the million-dollar question, Tammy. I mean, the last hearing is, for now, scheduled for next Thursday, but it's unclear at this point whether the Constitutional Court will stick to this schedule or decide to lengthen the trial. Now, the court's press officer, Chun Jae-yeon, said Wednesday regarding the possibility of scheduling additional hearings that it's a, quote, matter for the court to decide and that there's no official position yet. But the press officer did note that the trial dates can be postponed depending on the circumstances. President Yoon's legal team on Tuesday had requested that the impeachment trial hearings be held only once a week, arguing that it's impractical to maintain the current twice-a-week schedule while also managing Yoon's upcoming criminal trial starting on February 20th. Justices dismissed most of Yoon's witness applications related to alleged election fraud, which Yoon says was a pretext for his martial law. It has approved only 15 witnesses from both Yoon and the National Assembly side, despite the president's lawyers having applied for over 30 witnesses. But notably, it rescheduled a testimony session for National Police Agency Commissioner General Cho Ji-woo, who failed to appear in a previous hearing due to health reasons. So at the moment, it does seem that the court is focused on avoiding delays or calling up any witnesses it deems unnecessary, so as to not prolong the trial.
I see. Thank you, Soo-young. Do keep us updated. And the National Assembly Special Committee investigating the Yoon administration over allegations of planning an insurrection is holding its third hearing on Thursday morning. The committee has called 25 witnesses, including President Yoon, Acting President Choi Sang-mok, and former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, to testify at today's hearing. However, 9 of them, including Yoon and Kim, submitted notices of absence. This comes a day after a parliamentary attempt led by the main opposition party to question Yoon and Kim at their respective detention centers failed, as both refused to participate. The ruling party also boycotted those questioning attempts. The committee's investigation is scheduled to end on February 13th, but the opposition is considering pushing for an extension, citing the absence of key witnesses in previous hearings. Seoul and Washington's national security advisors Shin Won-sik and Michael Waltz held their first phone call on Wednesday night, agreeing to meet at the earliest possible date in person in Washington. This follows Waltz's appointment as the first top security official of the second Trump administration. According to Seoul's top office, the two exchanged views on bilateral relations, North Korea's nuclear and missile threats, and trilateral cooperation between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan. They also discussed cooperation on regional and global issues. Shin congratulated Waltz on his appointment and expressed confidence that the South Korea-U.S. alliance will continue to strengthen under the Trump administration. The U.S. official also said he expects the two countries would further expand their cooperation across a range of fields. U.S. President Donald Trump continues to expand his presence by sitting down with world leaders. Now, how can South Korea make sure that it doesn't get left out of Trump's diplomacy? We are joined by Professor Andrew Millard this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
So after holding his first summit talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump is now set to meet the Japanese Prime Minister this week. The question is, why do you think Trump picked Japan to hold his second summit with?
So this is a very important summit. So obviously he's met with the Israeli Prime Minister because the Israel-Gaza war is a very important one right now. But also this second summit with Prime Minister Ishiba, this is really reflecting the importance of Northeast Asia as a whole. But it's also important that we look at who is visiting who. Now, in this case, this will be Prime Minister Ishiba traveling to Washington to visit with President Trump. Right. Now, this also sort of signals that Donald Trump has, remember, only been in office now, again, for the second term, for less than 3 weeks. And he's been very active during this time. Prime Minister Ishiba has only been in office for a few months in Japan. But I think it signals that the Japanese government, they're very sort of wary of President Trump's activeness, and they want to head over to Washington as quickly as possible to sit down with President Trump, develop a very good relationship, discuss several issues. So they'll be discussing defense issues, in particular North Korea, maritime issues with the Chinese Navy, economic issues, and so on. So it's a very important summit, but I would say it suggests a little bit more that Japan is more of the instigator of this summit.
Well, good for Japan, but for South Korea, we have been going through a rough time ever since the martial law order was issued last December, which means that diplomacy is not at the forefront, especially with the country's leadership at risk. How should South Korea be worried that no Seoul-Washington summit is in sight?
Well, as you say, right now, diplomacy, it's not at the forefront of South Korean politics. And to be honest, that's rightly so. So right now, we have these domestic issues in South Korea with the impeachment process of President Yoon. Now, what South Korea needs to be careful of, it's not to rush through this process just to create a new leader. What South Korea needs to show the whole world, not just the US, but the whole world, is that South Korea, it has these democratic institutions. It has these democratic processes. It's not going to rush through those just so that it can have a leader on the global stage. Now, having said that, obviously, we do need a new leadership. Having a new leadership will be very important. And so once we get this new leader, whether that's a continuation of the Yoon government or whether it's a new government, then it'll be important. But also, I think for South Korea, when President Trump was last in office, South Korea was a bit of a target for the Trump government. They renegotiated the FTA. There were defense talks. Because all of that happened in the first term, I don't think it's as important for the second term. So I think the good relations between the US and Korea, despite the lack of Korean leadership right now, they will continue.
So you're saying that we can take our time to, get settled down
Right.
first and then build, a new relationship with Trump.
Exactly.
Then, Professor Millard, how can we approach the Trump administration so that we don't get left out in the meantime?
So right now, this is really the role of the ambassadors. So even though there's no president right now in office in Korea, we do have an acting prime minister. But more importantly, this is where the role of the ambassadors will be much more important. So right now in America, we have Jo Hyun-dong, who's the acting ambassador for the Republic of Korea to America. His role should be very active to go to the various ministries, if he can, to the White House, just reaffirm that South Korea is open for business. Everything is going as normal. Again, we have this impeachment process, but these democratic processes, we're not going to rush through those. Everything is in order in South Korea. There's nothing to worry about. We are open for business.
Well, Professor Millard, speaking of ambassador, the formal appointment of Kim Dae-gi, he is the ambassador designate to China and President Yoon's former chief of staff. That appointment has been delayed because of the whole Yoon's impeachment trial. Now, isn't this a big concern that the post is vacant, especially when we see another trade war growing between the U.S. and China?
Exactly. So right now, as you said, this trade war, it's starting to grow. Donald Trump, he's only been in office again for a few weeks, but we're seeing very quick responses. And so the fact that South Korea, it doesn't have an ambassador in China, this is quite worrying. So I know that the Speaker of the National Assembly for Korea, he's in China this week. I think it's Woon-sik. So that's a very important step, but he's only going to be there for a few days. The Chinese government, when they want to connect with South Korea to talk about economic issues, defense issues, whatever, the fact that there's no ambassador, the fact that there's no acting president in Korea, this is a little bit worrying given all of these very fast-moving issues that are happening right now.
It is indeed. Professor Millard, I'm sure you remember back in summer 2023, we saw the historic Camp David trilateral summit between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. Can something similar to this happen again during the Trump administration, or is it pie in the sky, or is it too early to speak about that?
I would say it's a little bit too early, and not just because of President Trump, because the whole summit will have potentially a complete leadership change. Back in 2023, it was President Biden for the US, Prime Minister Kishida for Japan, and President Yoon for Korea. Potentially, if President Yoon is removed from office, then the three leaders from all three countries will change. So there's a lot of variables that we need to look at in that situation. Potentially, it could happen, though.
Alrighty, Professor Millard, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
South Korea's current account balance last year more than tripled compared to the year before on the back of booming exports. Data from the Bank of Korea on Thursday showed that the country's overall current account balance in December was the highest any month of December on record, ending the year with a current account balance surplus of $99.04 billion. Now, this surpasses earlier estimates by the central bank, driven mainly by an increase in exports. Now, exports rose by more than 8% year-on-year, spurred by a jump in outbound semiconductor shipments. South Korea is joining the global wave of tightening restrictions on the Chinese AI service DeepSeek over data security concerns. Government ministries and firms alike are also moving to ban the service. Our Moon Hae-dan reports.
South Korean government agencies have restricted access to DeepSeek, a Chinese AI service accused of excessive data collection. Multiple government sources confirmed on Wednesday that the Ministry of National Defense, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy have all restricted access to DeepSeek on government computers connected to external networks. These ministries handle a significant amount of classified information related to diplomacy, national security, and trade. A Defense Ministry official told reporters that the decision was made due to widespread concerns about the AI platform. The move comes just a day after the Ministry of the Interior and Safety issued an advisory to central government ministries and 17 metropolitan and provincial governments, urging officials to be cautious when using generative AI services like DeepSeek and ChatGPT. While the advisory did not explicitly call for a ban, it warned against entering sensitive or personal information into AI platforms, citing potential security risks. South Korea's Personal Information Protection Commission sent an inquiry to DeepSeek's headquarters, requesting details on its data collection and storage practices, but the company has yet to respond. The private sector is also taking action, with major Korean tech companies restricting the use of DeepSeek. Kakao, an official partner of OpenAI, recently banned its employees from using the service for work by citing security concerns. LGU Plus also issued a security notice banning employees from using DeepSeek for work on the company network and advised employees to avoid using DeepSeek on personal devices. Samsung, SK, and LG Electronics have long prohibited unauthorized software on company devices, while Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power recently reinforced its AI security policies, banning DeepSeek on its internal network. DeepSeek has also been banned from government computers in Australia and Japan, while Italy has gone as far as banning the app entirely. In the US, the state of Texas has blocked DeepSeek from government-owned devices. Meanwhile, the European Union and the UK are closely monitoring potential risks associated with Chinese AI platforms. 문혜련, Arirang News.
World leaders criticized U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to take over the Gaza Strip. But Trump insists everyone loves his proposal. Lee Seung-ja has more.
During a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump proposed that the U.S. take over the Gaza Strip and resettle the Palestinian population. His plans to turn the area into the Riviera of the Middle East were heavily criticized by Western allies on Wednesday. The French Ministry of Foreign Affairs stressed its opposition to any forced displacement of Gazans, adding that Paris will continue to push for the implementation of a two-state solution. Italian Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said while Italy will look into Trump's plans, it still remains in favor of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. German President Walter Steinmeier slammed the plan, calling it unacceptable, adding that such actions will form a serious basis for the upcoming talks between the regional actors and the U.S. administration. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also criticized the proposal, calling the relocation of Gazans a form of ethnic cleansing.
In the search for solutions, we must not make the problem worse. It is vital to stay true to the bedrock of international law. It is essential to avoid any form of ethnic cleansing.
The paramilitary Palestinian Islamic Jihad group denounced what it called racist comments by the U.S. leader and vowed to fight his plans in Gaza. In a statement on Wednesday, the group said that Israel's attempt to force Palestinians to leave Gaza failed and that Trump's proposal will also fail. Despite the international condemnation, President Trump said Wednesday at the White House that everybody loves his proposal for a U.S. takeover of Gaza. Trump's officials were quick to clear up what they believe were misunderstandings, as U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Trump's plan was a unique offer to step in and clear debris and destruction in Gaza. He added that the move to relocate the Gazans was not meant as a hostile move and that details still needed to be worked out. With Trump also considering U.S. troop deployment to the Gaza Strip, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said Trump is willing to think outside the box, look for new and unique dynamic ways to solve problems, adding that the Pentagon is prepared to look at all options. Lee Seung-ja, Arirang News.
As tremors continue to shake the world-famous Greek island of Santorini, 2/3 of the residents on the island have reportedly left. According to a Greek public broadcaster ERT on Wednesday, citing officials, more than 11,000 of the island's 16,000 residents evacuated to the mainland. Of them, 6,000 took ferries, while 4,000 left on passenger planes. There have been hundreds of earthquakes in the region around Santorini for the past 13 days. While there have been no injuries or major damage, concerns are growing that the series of small tremors may be a precursor to a major earthquake.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. The United States Postal Service has announced that it has resumed accepting parcels from China and Hong Kong following a brief suspension after recent tariff changes. On Wednesday, the U.S. Postal Service announced it would resume accepting all inbound mail and packages from China and Hong Kong, reversing a suspension that lasted less than a day. The initial halt came in response to the U.S. government's imposition of a 10% tariff on Chinese imports, as well as the suspension of a customs exception, which previously allowed packages valued under $800 to enter the country duty-free. The brief suspension had raised concerns among e-commerce platforms like Temu and Shein, which heavily rely on direct shipments from China to U.S. consumers. Following the resumption of accepting parcels, Temu's parent company, PDD Holdings, saw its stock recover some losses. The UK has announced an additional financial aid package to support Ukraine during a visit by the British Foreign Secretary to Kyiv. Approximately $68.7 million in financial support was announced by British Foreign Secretary David Lammy on Wednesday. The new aid package aims to bolster Ukraine's resilience against Russian aggression and is designed to cover energy initiatives, economic recovery, and social services. The announcement follows the recent signing of a 100-year partnership agreement between the UK and Ukraine in January, aimed at strengthening defense cooperation and economic collaboration. Since Russia's invasion, the UK has committed a total of £977 million, or approximately $1.22 billion in support for Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine conducted a major exchange of prisoners of war on Wednesday, with each side releasing 150 soldiers. The swap took place in an undisclosed location mediated by the United Arab Emirates. The released Russian soldiers were transported to Belarus for medical examination and rehabilitation before returning to Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the return of Ukrainian personnel, including members of the Navy, Air Force, and ground forces. The last exchange of prisoners took place in December of last year. Over in the U.S., a statue of Portuguese football star Cristiano Ronaldo was unveiled in New York City's Times Square on Wednesday. Standing at approximately 366 centimeters tall, the bronze statue was created by sculptor Sergio Fornari to celebrate Ronaldo's 40th birthday. The statue was mounted on a truck and painted in green, red, and gold, the colors of the Portuguese flag. The event attracted a large crowd of fans, many waving Portuguese flags and chanting Ronaldo's signature, Su Celebration. The statue will be taken on a tour around the world by the creator.
It has been an absolutely frigid week here, with a cold wave warning remaining in place for most of the central parts of Korea. In Seoul, we woke up to lows of around -12 degrees Celsius, but with the wind chill, it feels even colder. And if you think that's bad, some parts of Gangwon-do province have dropped to -20 degrees. Snow and bitterly cold winds are making conditions even tougher for the west coast of Jeollado and Jeju, with 3 to 8 centimeters of more snow in the forecast through this morning. Then snow returns to central regions continuing into Friday. The capital could see up to 5 centimeters. Jeollabuk-do could be getting 5 to 10 centimeters of snowfall. Be careful careful out on the roads. Bone-chilling temperatures will ease just a bit, with highs jumping to above freezing in Seoul at 1, Daegu, Gwangju at 3 degrees. We'll have to wait until early next week to see some much-needed cold relief. Stay warm and keep those hot drinks close.
That is all we have for this morning. We'll be back tomorrow at the same time, 10 a.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
Step into a world where culture speaks beyond words, bridging hearts and minds. Hello, this is your DJ Sujung for Culture Crunch. Crunch on a new flavor of K-culture with me every day.
bring a new type of news show.
New insights and new styles and new topics every day.
We're a news generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Thursday, February 6th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and thank you for tuning in to News Generation. Joining us this Thursday is Chester Dainong.
Happy Thursday, everyone.
Happy Thursday, woohoo! And Julian Kim.
Happy Thursday and good morning to everyone as well.
Happy Thursday and good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So it's Thursday, which means we're gonna begin with our keyword news. Our keyword news for today is Netflix. The Netflix original series, The Trauma Code: Heroes on Call, has taken the top spot on the platform's latest top 10 non-English shows chart, ending Squid Game Season 2's 5-week reign. Now, the Korean medical drama, which premiered on January 24th, secured the #1 position for the last week of January, amassing 11.9 million views. Squid Game Season 2 dropped to second place. So I want to ask our panelists, did you also watch The Trauma Code: Heroes on Call? It's going huge in Korea and obviously around the world. And what do you think has made this such a global hit?
Yeah, so I only watched the first 10 minutes of the episode last night, so I can't I don't have a strong opinion on why this movie or the show is like a sensation here.
Not yet.
But so far, I just loved how fast-paced the storyline is. I think the cast is great, so I'll be happy to discuss more when I watch more of it, but I loved it so far.
Well, hope you end the show soon so that you can share your opinions more on this series. But Cheska, before we came on air, we heard that you did finish the show. So how did you find the show to be?
I actually finished the series and I actually loved it. And I actually read the analysis on why the show was so sensational to the Korean public. And here were some of the analysis for those who might be interested. There is actually no gratuitous romance line, which is very atypical of like a K-drama series.
Especially medical drama, we used to have a lot of romance lines between the characters, right?
Exactly, a doctor and a patient, or, you know, something along the lines. But you literally focus on the characters themselves, and the characters are so three-dimensional. And also the speed. The series actually proceeds very quickly.
Right.
The events unfold, so there's no waiting. You actually really get into what it's like to be an active trauma surgeon. And I think this is kind of important, reality. So even though the series is about a superhero and a character with a superhero ability, the events and I guess the circumstances behind what's happening is actually modeled after the actual trauma system here in South Korea.
Right.
And also the character was inspired by an active trauma surgeon here in South Korea who tried to change the system. So I think in that sense, the Korean general public actually feels a lot of hope and also catharsis for a reality that is hard to change.
Which could be one of the reasons why this show is being so loved in the country.
Yeah, I think everyone is kind of rooting for it.
Right. So I watched it until episode 2. So me and Julian, we now have to watch and finish the show. And then maybe we'll get back to it once the show reaches another new milestone. And that was our keyword news for this Thursday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. It's Thursday, which means it's time to explore the Korean wave and the global appeal of Korean culture. Take a look at the screen to find out more.
For food lovers, this question has always been a classic debate: rice or bread. In Korea, bread has become more than just a snack, it's a staple for many. So much so that we now have new slang terms like bangsuni and bangdori to describe people who are absolutely obsessed with bread. With this bread craze taking off, we're seeing a surge in unique Korea-made breads making their way onto tables worldwide.
Well, just looking at the VCR has made my mouth start to water, although it's been less than 5 minutes since our show started. But I want to start off our show today with a really hard, tricky question, which is, are you more of a rice person or a bread person?
No! You cannot do this to me.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just joking. I am very much a rice person, but you know, and I'm sure all the viewers know how much I love dessert. Yes, there you go. I love pastry. I love the Korean pastries even more. And the bakery selection, I mean, the flavors here are so delicate, flavorful, and we will talk about it more today, but it's very creative.
Right. So, Cheska, although you are a rice person, you are still deeply in love with bread?
I have deep commitments with the bread selection as well.
Okay, well, good to know that. How about you, Julian?
Well, this is one of my favorite icebreaker questions. Well, I love both. I will have to say I choose rice. Only because rice is such a really big staple item when it comes to Korean cuisine. So if there's no rice, the meal doesn't feel complete. So I will have to say, just because I want to feel satisfied after eating like a Korean dish, I have to go with rice.
But you still love bread, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Just like Jessica, I'm a huge fan.
All right. So as mentioned earlier, Korean bread is gaining popularity globally. So I want to ask you, Jessica, do we have any numbers or data that really back up this trend?
Yeah, absolutely. So we all know that K-food is taking over not only people's heart, but also their palate. So with ramyeon and kimbap setting a world record in export, snacks and bread, basically the bakery area actually hit a record number as well. So let's take a look at the screen to see this growth in actual numbers. Now, if we look at the figures, K-bakery export grew by almost 20% compared to last year. And what's really remarkable is that if we look at over the 5 years, the figure almost doubled. That's almost about 200 million USD of growth. And if we look at it by country, the first K-bakery import country is United States. So they import more than 30%, followed by China and Japan. And we are actually expanding into Europe as well, which is kind of exciting. And if I actually add my very own testimonials here, living in New York, I actually saw K-bakery, like chains, growing like year by year.
Really?
Yeah. And I actually saw more Americans in these K-bakery shops enjoying like coffee and K-bakery selection. And what's even more surprising is that when I was in Mongolia, K-bakery is actually considered a luxury brand.
Really? That's very interesting.
It's very interesting, right? So imagine how excited I was when I saw like these names that are very familiar.
Right.
And people saying, oh yeah, those breads are so, luxury and they're good bread.
Wow.
Yeah, they are.
They are definitely making waves across the world.
Yep.
Then let's now talk about specifically which types of Korean bread have become the most popular. So Julian, could you tell our viewers more?
Yeah, so traditionally Korean street foods like bungeoppang and hopbang have made significant contributions to the growth of Korean bread exports. They're very iconic winter street food snacks in Korea that are beloved by everyone. Now in Korea, most people carry like 3,000 won in cash or more just because if they see a vendor on the street, they are just going straight there just to buy one. Yeah. So while the original version has sweet red bean paste, there are many new variations of this that exploded in popularity. These include custard, cheese, sweet potato, and even pizza flavor.
Wow.
But on the other hand, hopbang is named after the sound ho, which is like the sound that people make when they're blowing on bread that's super hot, like
I see.
Yeah, well, hopbang is originally either filled with pat or red bean or vegetables, yache, which I guess is similar to like a steamed dumpling. But just like bungeoppang, hopbang comes in flavors like pizza, sweet potato, pumpkin, even come in a spicy chicken buldak flavor.
What?
Right.
Yeah, never tried it, but
I don't think I ever will.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah, but you can get all of these on the streets of Korea, but they're also exported worldwide, so they're very accessible to people.
Right, so Julian just named a couple of types of Korean bread that are gaining popularity globally. But to find out more, we also asked the same question to our viewers about their favorite Korean bread and also the reason why. And here's what 3 of them had to say. So our first comment for this Thursday is by Dizzy Heights 1000. The bread with cream is my go-to when I drink coffee. Toby Odie says, to be honest, I found Korean bread, even plain sliced bread, sweeter than bread in Canada. Our last comment, Tae P2Q. Have you heard of Yeongnam baguette, Polak roll baguette? It tastes so wonderful. You definitely know a lot about Korean bread. So up next, we're going to bring in a Gen Z guest from the United States to share her experience with Korean bread. Stay tuned.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
So joining us this morning is Erin Tietman, an American Gen Z. Welcome, Erin, to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, Erin, we first want to ask you, what types of Korean bread have you tried until now? And could you tell us how they compare to the bread you were used to in the United States?
Sure. So I've tried a lot of Korean breads, everything from milk bread to melon bread to bungeoppang, even like the salt bread and the garlic bread in Korea. I would say that the main difference between Korean bread and bread in the US is the flavors and the textures. So I would say in the US, the bread is used more for like sandwiches and toast. So it's much heartier and it's more savory than Korean bread. Whereas Korean bread tends to be more lighter and fluffier. So there's sweet fillings sometimes or sweet toppings. And even I find like the savory breads in Korea are much sweeter than you would find in the US. So even like the sausage bread or garlic bread, like it tastes a little bit sweet to me. And also in Korea, I would say that bread is like eaten as a snack or a dessert, whereas in the US, it's almost part of a meal. So it will be eaten with breakfast or lunch as a sandwich.
So Erin, as you heard, today we're talking about the increase of K-bakery export. So in your opinion, which Korean bread do you think would be the most popular among your friends or in your country?
I think that actually salt bread is the most popular. Like I actually asked my friends and that was the bread that they by far said was their favorite Korean bread. I think it really appeals to American tastes because it is very savory and like buttery, whereas a lot of Korean breads tend to be sweeter. But actually, it's funny because Korean bread is quite popular here in the States, even though I don't live in a big city. Recently, a Korean chain opened up nearby, and I remember my friend telling me about it and saying, "Oh, we should go someday." And I said, "Oh, like what's the name?" And she said the name, and I said, "Oh, I know what that is." I've been there many times, but I never expected one to open up right down the street from me.
Yeah, Erin, it sounds like you tried a lot of Korean bread, but is there any type of Korean bread you haven't tried yet, but you'd love to try?
Yeah, actually a couple of years ago, or maybe only a year ago, I remember there was a bread called Pandoro bread that was very popular in Korea. It's the one that's like a cake or bread that has the mountain of like sugar on top. And I remember seeing it a lot in cafes or like on TikTok, I saw it a lot. But I never got the chance to try it. So I feel like that was one that I was a bit of a regret. I would love to try. Like it looks so cool. I feel like it looks like a snowy mountain or something.
Right, so I hope you try it out in the near future. Erin, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you as well. Have a good day.
You too. Right, so during our live interview with Erin, she also mentioned several standout features of Korean bread. I now want to ask your opinion. Are there any unique features you'd like to introduce to our viewers who are quite new to Korean bread?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think for one, if we look at our food culture here in South Korea, as Julian mentioned, rice is sort of the staple diet. So, and we have these side dishes, very savory. So bread, baked goods are still more of like a dessert or an after meal. So in that sense, I think that is primarily the reason that K-bakery is so flavorful.
And sweet.
And sweet, exactly. So it's more like a meal-like bread, I would say. A great example is the sweet and savory sausage bread, the pizza bun, the sweet potato filling buns, and like almond cream cheese, filling, but that has an almond meringue on the side. And we actually saw it in our viewers' comment. There is something called the Myeongran baguette, which is the Pollock roe baguette. So you see these combinations that you wouldn't think is like a dessert, but you apply it to a dessert and create like a K-bakery combination.
So it's like something in the middle of a meal and a dessert.
Yeah, exactly. And also because maybe Korean diet is more savory, I think people like to heighten up the sugar and the sweetness from the dessert section as well.
Right.
So it's like you don't want to miss both. You kind of want to have a little bit of everything.
You want to have the best of both worlds.
Exactly, yes.
What do you think, Julian?
I think the main thing that sticks out about Korean bread the most is that it's super soft and super fluffy. I think this is just my own assumption, but perhaps it's because a lot of Koreans are accustomed to eating steamed rice at their meals, which is also very, very soft. And in many Western countries, like we mentioned earlier, bread is considered a staple meal, just like how rice or noodle is in many Asian countries. However, in Korea, bread is considered more like a dessert or a snack food, which is why it tends to be more smaller in size and slightly sweeter. Like take pizza bread, for example. While pizza is known to be a savory dish, Korean pizza bread is sweet, which is surprising for people trying it for the first time, including myself. I remember my first time trying Korean garlic bread. I was just completely flabbergasted with like how sweet it was. Because back in America, I'm used to having garlic bread that is really pungent, garlicky,
salty.
Yes, has a rich velvety butter flavor with like a slight kiss of parsley. But in Korea, I don't really know what it is, but I think it's kind of like a sugary syrup that they drizzle on top of the garlic bread. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I don't want to sound like I dislike Korean bread. I really do. I just, coming from a different country, I guess, I'm not really sure how I feel about certain savory and sweet hybrid bread dishes. But that being said, there are many Korean breads that I highly recommend. As we mentioned earlier, 붕어빵, 호빵, there are very good classics that are very good. But my personal favorite is 꽈배기, which is a deep-fried Korean twisted donut that's coated either in sugar or cinnamon. So if you're skeptical about the sweet and savory combination, I highly recommend trying those three foods because they are a great gateway to Korean bread.
I mean, this just came up to my mind, but Julian is really good at describing different types of Korean bread using all those adjectives.
You should write menus for the description of the
I love food. I can talk about food all day.
You're indeed a foodie.
And then you can write like warning messages too. This might be overly sweet for those who might be not accustomed to sugar, so please choose wisely.
Great. So Julian just gave us a few recommendations. We're going to end off our show today with recommendations that you'd be curious about. So if you were to recommend the perfect bread and drink pairing, which is a lot of us really like, we always like to pair good bread with, of course, good drinks.
Good drink.
What would it be?
Yujin, you're really asking a lot of questions.
Very tricky questions
very tricky questions. It's only tricky because I have so many options.
Well, we have enough time, so could you please elaborate?
Let's start the list. Okay, I will give you two big branches of options. One, if you're kind of like me who likes a dark espresso, like a dark drink, like Americano, I would like to pair with a very sweet and savory bread, like almond cream cheese bun or, sweet potato fillings. Or in Korea, we have lattes with very unique flavors like matcha or sweet potato or 흑임자, which is black sesame. Yeah, black sesame. So you have that, and then you pair it with like a salty bun, like a garlic butter or sausage roll, or even the salt bread that Erin talked about. And then you get this, what in Korea we call the perfect combination of 단짠. Yeah.
Could you please tell us what that is?
Sweet, salt.
You can eat forever.
Exactly. It's a cycle that never ends. You just go into the cycle and you just follow the taste buds all over. Yeah.
So Cheska, you are recommending espresso with a sweet bread and then sweet drinks with savory bread.
Exactly, yes.
Got it. Please put that on your list. Now let's move on to Julian's list.
Yeah, so with drinks, maybe it's just my LA roots, but I love a matcha latte, and I love hot chocolate too with the bread, and also my Korean roots, I just love a good ice-cold iced Americano. So those are my recommendations for drinks, but if you can't handle caffeine, I think a tea would be nice. But when it comes to bread, just eat everything.
Try everything out.
Yeah, try everything out. Like when you go to a typical Korean bakery, you'll be shocked by the variety of all the bread that is available. So just pick out a couple that seems good and just try it out. Just cut it up in half, Korean style, and just share it up with people and just,
And then you could probably find your favorite Korean bread.
Yeah,
exactly. Try all sorts of Korean bread. And if I could give my recommendation, I'm more like a cake person. I noticed that Korean cafes, they have really good cake. So my favorite is pairing very sweet chocolate cake with iced Americano. So I think that will be a go-to choice for many people because there is chocolate cake all over the world. But I definitely recommend you to try Korean cakes at Korean cafes too.
And Yujin, if I may add another recommendation, in Korea, because it's a K bakery, there are some shops that actually use a rice flour instead of
these days.
The wheat flour, and they actually create a very unique texture and flavor. So I would definitely recommend our viewers to try that as K bakery option as well.
Right, so a lot for our viewers to try out. If you have a chance to visit bread stores in Korea, or if you have a chance to visit bread franchises that's coming from Korea in your country, please try these menus and leave a comment below on what you thought. And that wraps up this episode of News Generation, but we will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Cheska Dainho.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Thank you. And Julian Kim.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for our viewers for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea if you've signed a contract for a one room. Obviously, you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4.